Hey guys, Jeremy Parvin here. Welcome back to the channel, and this is Lily. As you know, I've created a passive income stream of over $50,000 a month with rental property income. My current portfolio is worth over $6.5 million. I've done it all while working a full-time job. And on our channel, Lily and I are going to tell you how you can do it too. Today on my channel, I'm going to review with you the tax assessment project that I've been working on. And then I'm also going to talk about rent increases. Should I increase rents? Should I not? Do you? Should you? Etc. Please don't forget to smash the like button to help the YouTube channel. And don't forget to subscribe and make comments because Lily is going to be giving one pair of Apple AirPod Pros to one of our first 1,000 subscribers. I recently did a video on the tax reassessments that my local county is doing. And I showed you how to use Zillow to help you find values and to dispute any variances that the tax assessors was trying to assess your properties as being worth more than they really are. And so now that I've completed that process, I wanted to show you the other end of that to see how that went. So let me show you a spreadsheet that I made for that. Okay, so basically I have 23 residential rental properties, one commercial property, and I also had one personal property tax for our business personal property that works similarly. So I appealed 14 out of the 25 properties, or about 56% of my properties. I list the current Zillow date and the current Zillow value, and then I listed the previous assessment that was listed on the tax cards or letters that they sent me, and then the new assessment that they sent me here. The increase, the percentage, and the difference between the assessment and Zillow. So this one, for example, is the assessment is $40,000 less than what Zillow is saying the property's worth. So that looks pretty good, right, for paying taxes on that. And then over here, after I appealed it, so let me speak to that a second. All I simply did was get myself organized, get on the call with them. They actually just answered the phone and started talking to me right away, the first person I answered. And I said, hey, can I just start by doing this over the phone? They said, sure, you can do it over the phone or you can come in person. I've done it in person in the past. So we just kind of went down through my list here. I probably spent less than an hour on the phone with him going over all these properties. I did have to talk to a separate person in the commercial space. For the ones that I felt that were out of bounds, they simply kicked off the appeals process and they went out and did a drive-by and walked around my house, I think just on the outsides. And then he said, you'll receive a letter back in a week or two. So I wrote that appeal response amount right here. And then I showed a reduction in the appeals amount here. And then I showed a final increase from the appeal response amount where I landed with that property. So I basically landed at a 9.5% increase versus the 16.5% increase that they initially gave on this particular property, which was very low and lower than most of them. 80% of mine are in one county, and then I've got a couple of other counties that some of these are in. So I've not received this one back here. I don't expect it to vary much. And then on house number 3, you can see that they increased the appraisal by 33%. I got a response back that valued it at the same thing, so no difference there. I was pretty happy with that. I looked at it and said, okay, Zillow says it's worth $197,000. They're coming in at $153,000. What I really think that house is worth, yes, it's going up a lot. And again, these for this main county, they do this once every 4 years. And so if I take that 33 and divide by 4, that's 8.3% per year, which isn't terrible. I'm okay with this property assessment of $152,000 on this one. This next property is on the Georgia side, and I don't think that this county is doing this right now. The next one here, house number 5, they increased it 38%, and I did get a response back on this one, and they lowered it by $27,000, so this was a pretty good win right here. Instead of going up by 38%, it's only going up 6%. So I was happy with that, so I marked this one as closed. House number 6, Zillow said it was worth $235,000. They assessed it at $176,000. I was pretty happy with that, so I did not appeal this one. Got a Georgia one, got a Bradley County one, got a Georgia one, and then house number 14, Zillow says it's worth $270,000. They came in at $216,000 with their appraisal. I did appeal this one. They came back and said no, $216,000, and I said, okay, I'm fine with that. So I closed this one out. House number 16, they increased the assessment by 62%. Crazy, right? I appealed this one. They came back and dropped it about 10 grand, bringing the increase down to only 56%. I think I could probably sell the house for this or more, so I'm okay with it. I just think a 56% increase is kind of crazy, so I closed it out. House number 18, they increased it 48%. I appealed this one. They brought it back down $31,000. and so the increase was only 26%, so I was pretty happy with this one. House number 19, I appealed this one and they brought it down another 87. It's still going up 56%, which is a little crazy. I think I could definitely sell it for that. House number 20, I appealed this, they brought it down 4,000, so my increase was 33. House number 23, I appealed it and they brought it down 13. House number 27 and 28, I thought their assessments were pretty fair. These next four are properties that I just bought last year. They increased it about 30%. I appealed it and they didn't change this one. House 33, they wouldn't change this either. Check this one out. I bought it last year. They reassessed the tax amount and it went up 60%. This house was move-in ready and I did $5,000 worth of minor repairs to this house. It's a little crazy that they increased this so much. I think I paid $101 for this house and they're saying it's worth $123. I mean, great, I got a good deal, right? I would expect them to use what I paid for it just 6 months previously as a new tax assessment. And that's why I appealed some of these four that I bought last year. Same thing with 35, they wouldn't change it any. I think 177 is pretty reasonable. I think I could sell it for that. I think I could sell all of these for this. So that was all the residential property. Moving down here is the commercial property, and this was a big win. I appealed this one and they brought it back down $159,000, and so the increase here was only 17%. And then on our personal property, this works a little differently. I have a sheet of all the assets that I have on record as you own, and so I went through and marked through some old computers, equipment, and those sorts of things off the list and reduced that by $93,000, so that's reducing it by about 27%. So in general, I was somewhat satisfied with the results of this, so I decided not to go back to the second level of the appeal process, which I have done in the past. So if you look at this summary, I basically reduced the amount of residential property tax values by $58,000, 160 on the commercial and 93 on the personal property. And so I lowered my tax basis on this property by $311,000. So again, I appealed 14 out of the 25, or about 56% of those. And of the 14 that I asked for appeals on, they actually lowered 9 out of 14, which is 64%. Most of these are residential property. There was one commercial and there was one personal property tax. All of those have different tax rates. If I just assume the residential property rates of 1.36, and that's city, by the way. The commercial is going to be much higher than that, and the personal property is different. But just for some big round numbers, if I multiply it by 1.36 residential property tax, that will save me $4,230 a year. And again, my county does this every 4 years, so 4-year savings on that is $17,000. So again, I just spent about an hour on the phone with the county tax assessor going through those. Yes, I pulled together my detail on my spreadsheet. I like to keep up with that anyway. Certainly time well spent. As I went through this, he had notes in his computer about when I've done this 4 years ago and 8 years ago, and they had already noted some things where they had given me some 5, 10, and 15% discounts for some water problems close to a busy road, steep driveway, and some of these things that I walked him through, or that it's outdated inside, it needs new siding and so on. So they had made note of some of these things already, and so some of my past work had already been baked into this, so I didn't save as much as I had the first time that I had done this. Every penny that you save is a direct hit to the bottom line. So in the fourth quarter, when I receive my tax bills, we'll see what the actual tax amounts are for these properties. Hopefully they don't have a tax increase in here with this tax base going up as well. They're not supposed to, but they can get a tax increase approved also at any time. So I expect to see some increases in the property taxes for my portfolio. The other expense that's going to be increasing with all of the increases in property values is insurance. It's going to be more directly affected, even more than property taxes, because if your house that used to be worth $100,000 is now worth $200,000, then you're going to have to pay insurance on that higher amount in order to cover it in case there were a loss or for damages. These two things are going to cause my operational cost to increase. So that leads me to the next thing I wanted to talk to you about today.
Raising rents.
Okay, so I put a spreadsheet together for you. Another thing I do to try to make this easy on myself is to make most of my leases renew around the same time of the year, and I do that when people like to move. So right here on my little list that I see in front of me all the time when I'm collecting rent is when their lease ends. You'll see another neat column here about how many years that they've leased leased from me. The next column is escalation percentage, or how much each year I can increase their rent. That's something I put in their leases, and I talk to them about it. I tell them, how it protects them from having someone increase their rent by double digits, so it's good for them, but it helps me also to pay for increases in things like property taxes and insurance, and that's something that's happening right now that's never happened this much in the past. So I'm glad I have this in. I'm glad I kind of talked to them about it. And the third thing I tell them is, hey, if you can help me to keep your rents down by keeping your maintenance costs down, I'll do my best to keep your rents down, and it's a partnership. The next thing here, I've mentioned this before, but this is a fantastic thing for landlords to keep up with, and it's simply the rent over the fair market value of the house. For the fair market value, I just use Zillow like I've shown you before. Oh, I wanted to show you this. Let me look at my years leased. I want to kind of show you my average down here at the bottom. So my average tenant has been with me about 2.5 years. The top half is residential, and then here's commercial tenants here. So you can see I got a commercial tenant 2.8 and 5.7 years. And then if I go back up here, I just want to show you a few neat ones here. So 7.5 years here, 9.5 years there, 6.5, 4.7, 11.6. So those are great tenants. Me, that's what I like to get. I'd much rather have a long-term tenant than I would get maximum rent for a place. The turnarounds are expensive and time-consuming, and I want to show you that here too. What will happen is that if you look at these rent versus fair market value, you see I've marked these as red because they're below my average. Let me jump down here and show you my average. As the value of my properties have been increasing, this percentage has been going down. So if my average tenant is paying just under 1%, or 75/10%, I should say, anyone below that is kind of paying below average naturally. Let's go back up and look at long-term tenants. You'll see, yes, they're below 0.75, right there at 62. So their rent's very undervalued, and I could certainly get more rent out of that property. You see it here with this long-term tenant, you see it here with this one, and so all of my long-term tenants have below market rates on rent. So I made this set of green columns to take a look at the different proposed rent increases for this year. If you'll notice these dates over here, right, they're in the March, April, May, June, that kind of thing. So it's lease renewal season, and it's also easier to batch stuff in your life. So if I'm doing it now, I kind of do it once and plan for it, and I'm done for the year. Okay, so I've got a column for the last time that they got a rent increase. Last year with COVID, I didn't increase rents, and so that's also dropping this number down while prices have been increasing. Let me say this: a lot of small landlords don't increase rents because it's kind of tricky. Do you want to cause somebody to move, or do you want to keep a great tenant? I think it's more important to keep a great tenant, but you also want to keep an eye on this and not let it get too far out of bounds. So I make this spreadsheet to take a look at it, and then I kind of think about it. So here we go. This tenant, this is a relatively new tenant. They did get this house at a great rate. They also paid 6 months in advance, and they're doing a great job of keeping this house up. So I am going to increase theirs a little bit, and I hope they don't move out. But I could definitely rent that house for more than this, and so I think it's worth the risk. And I really need to cover myself with all these costs that I'm going to be incurring. So this next house, they're well below my average. I've helped them out in the past a lot when they've been unable to pay their rent, and I've dropped it down a lot, and then it's taken me several years to kind of get back where it was. That's why they have a high percent increase in theirs. And so on this one, I'm proposing increasing this to full 6%. Oh, and this column shows what the proposed new rent amount would be over the fair market value. So so here we take it from 0.62, getting it up to 0.67. So still far below my 0.75 average. So on these are not happening right now. This tenant's been in here about 5 years, well under market. This was actually a lease purchase. They're not going to complete this one. He actually wants to move to a month-to-month. I'm going to increase this one 10%, which is kind of hefty, but still it's only at 0.64, which is well below the 0.75. So he's still getting a good deal on this. So you can kind of see how I've done this. I've covered up my notes column a bit, but this one is due in December. House number 14, they actually contacted me a few weeks ago and said, hey, we want to renew for 2 years. And I said, sure. Their lease has a 2.9, which is very favorable. They're getting a great rate on this house. You can see even bumping it up, that's only 0.63%. Great tenants. They're doing some amazing landscaping in the back. So keeping some excellent tenants who are keeping it in really great shape and paying very well, it's worth it to me to keep them in there even though I'm getting less rent. House number 19, this guy's been in there 9.5 years. The only tenant I've ever had in this house house. He never calls me for anything. I think we've had his air conditioner fixed a couple of times. Fantastic tenant, zero trouble. Oh, and this house 16 and house number 9 have already responded, no problem. The same day I sent out the email. This is such a nice lady in this house, fantastic tenant. She's very undervalued in this. I don't really want to increase her rate, but she needs a fence for her dog, and I know it would make her so happy. And so what I'm going to do is increase her rent by the amount in the agreement, and then I'm going to build her a fence for her dog. She's going to be so happy and hopefully stay there for a very long time. It's probably not a good financial move for me. In other words, it would probably take me a couple of years to recoup the cost of the fence, but I know she's going to love it, and she's probably going to stay indefinitely if I do that. And so it's worth the risk to me to increase her rate a little bit. She knows it's very undervalued, so I think she'll stay regardless. If people are happy with a place, it's very livable, they tend to stay there for a long time. I purposely do things to make houses more livable, like add extra cabinets and door hooks behind all the bathroom and bedroom doors. You know, I think if I lived here, what would I want? I'll modify the cabinets to install a microwave above the stove, and I'll make sure every place has a dishwasher. So here you can see the proposed properties I'm going to be doing an increase. This next month is going to total $802. Hopefully that'll help me to offset some of the increased costs from property taxes and insurance. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and please let me know in the comments below if you've been successful at saving money on your tax reassessments. How did you do it? Tell us any tips and share it with us. And the same on the rent increases. If you're a landlord, do you increase your rents? Do you not? Why so? Tell us your hints and tips too.
Oh, and by the way, even though I'm a licensed CPA and have 3 business degrees, I'm just a guy on YouTube with my dog, so please consult with your professionals before making any investment decisions. Until next time, I hope you have a great week. I post every week, so be sure to hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you'll know when I post my next video. Thank you so much.